what the city is talking about, the news that impacts you. Welcome to the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Welcome to the Montreal Now podcast. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall, and here are some of the stories we looked at this week. Conspiracy theories. They've been around since the beginning of time, but now, according to some, they're in their golden age. We'll find out more. And while we're all dealing with COVID in our own way, the threat of another wave returning this fall is still a distinct possibility. But there are now new treatments beyond just vaccines. We'll talk to a doctor about one of them.
And we'll talk about the Supreme Court of Canada recent ruling on consent and condom use. If you say you'll wear a condom and you don't, you could be convicted of sexual assault. But we begin with this today. It's called quiet quitting, and it doesn't mean whispering, "I quit." It means you quit going above and beyond in your job. Is it effective? We found out.
Playing it. Jill Cotton's a career trends expert at Glassdoor. She's on the line right now. Jill, thanks so much for the time today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Can we begin with a basic sort of explanation of what quiet quitting is considered to be?
Sure. Quiet quitting is doing the absolute bare minimum that's needed for you to complete your job. So this means no going above and beyond, but also importantly, it's not really engaging with your job at all. So it's enough so that you don't get sacked straight away and that you still get paid. But yeah, absolute bare minimum.
I'm wondering if the key word there, though, is straight away, though.
Right.
It's like you don't get fired right away.
Right away, yeah.
But ultimately you will.
Well, I think we know that burnout is still really prevalent amongst employees across Canada. We can see that in all the reviews that we have on Glassdoor. What quiet quitting is quite often, it's actually not new at all. Lots of us have done it in ourselves. So when we know that we want to leave a job, we may well step back from our current day activities whilst we then put our efforts into looking for a new role. So quiet quitting is kind of cutting back and potentially kind of looking elsewhere. The problem with quiet quitting is that what you think is very quietly quitting could well be shouting really loudly to someone else that you're unhappy in your role, that you're disengaging. Right. And so whilst quiet quitting can kind of help if you just need to take a short-term step back, in the long term, I really wouldn't recommend it as a strategy in order to further your career.
I mean, it honestly sounds like a pretty miserable existence. Like you can't stand your job, you're showing up anyway, but you're just doing the absolute bare minimum, as you said. Wouldn't this be the key opportunity? Like, okay, if you're not quitting, then to communicate with your supervisor that the current situation is not working for you?
Absolutely. All of the research at Glassdoor shows that if you have a transparent workplace culture, then the company is more productive, but more importantly, your employees are happier. So having that open culture within your company where you do encourage those conversations and actually make real time to check in. We know that with hybrid and remote work on the up, that it is more difficult to make that time to really check in to make sure that your team are okay. Are they still enjoying the role? Do they still feel satisfied with the task that you're giving them? So making that time to have that conversation is super important. And if you're in a company where actually that time isn't made, then as an employee, request that one-to-one. Ask your line manager to make that time where you can really analyze what it is that you're doing, what you're happy with. And if they won't allow that, then perhaps it's time to look for something new.
You know, I brought up the part about COVID at the beginning of the interview, Jill, because, of course, we heard about, as we said, the Great Resignation, so many people just deciding, I don't want to do this job anymore because COVID, I guess, brought us a new set of rules and a new set of circumstances to have to work with or through. How much do you think that actually had to do with what we're seeing now as you're describing this?
Sure. I think what the pandemic did was gave us all the opportunity to think. Yes, there was the Great Resignation, but actually for many people, they weren't able to leave their jobs because there wasn't another job that they were able to take or that they wanted to take indeed. Now it's slightly changed because actually the labour market is more in favour of the job seekers. So there are more jobs out there. There's more ability to change. And that potentially has allowed quiet quitting to slip back onto the radar. because there are more jobs out there, people can look to see whether or not there's other options for them. Something that perhaps 12 months ago, 18 months ago, at the height of COVID, it just wasn't possible to make the move and to kind of take the jump to leave your role. There's now more opportunity to look for new opportunities.
I feel like employers are in a really tricky situation right now, right? Because everybody's reassessing and different priorities, and employees are getting to call the shots in ways that they never have before. So as an employer, I mean, in the past, I would say if you noticed an employee behaving this way and doing the bare minimum, you would sack them, right? You wouldn't hesitate. You'd be like, okay, bye-bye. But now, isn't there sort of more motivation to try to improve the situation and hold on to those employees?
You're absolutely right. Across the board, across every industry, hiring is super tough right now. And that situation is not going to change in the months to come. So what companies need to do is go back to transparency, to have that open culture and to understand what it is that their employees want from their experience at work. And you have to remember that actually what one person might want from in terms of work-life balance, someone else might just want a bigger salary. So it's really good to kind of lean in and listen to your workforce to understand what they need. We know that the companies who have come out of the pandemic and performed well are those who have been able to adapt to that change. We know that all of our lives have changed because of COVID, and as such, that many businesses have had to change too. When the companies can change, when they can adapt, when they can really listen to their employees, that's when they can be successful, and that's when they can hold on to the talent that they're thought so hard to get.
Yeah, you lay out a very great theoretical roadmap. I'm wondering, are we seeing bosses, though, begin to realize that and actually beginning to change the way they operate?
We see it all the time. So on Glassdoor, we are seeing that companies are being more highly rated than ever before. This means that in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, work-life balance, the power of senior management, that employees are rating those things more than ever before. So we have come through COVID, we've gone through all that change. And again, the companies who are doing really well are those ones who are listening to their employees, really focusing on employee experience and making sure that there's the resources there that the team members need in order to succeed.
All right. Just before we wrap up, I would like to know what Glassdoor is. What does Glassdoor do?
Sure. So Glassdoor is a platform where employees can leave anonymous reviews about their companies. And so we give insights, which means that when you're looking to move jobs, you can understand what Google or Amazon might be like to work for, what they might offer in terms of salaries. So there's all salaries on there, what they might offer in terms of culture and workplace experience.
So you're kind of like Yelp, but for businesses.
Exactly. And we're also backed up with an economic research team so that we can tell you and to companies as well what might be coming up in the job market in the next few months and the years ahead.
That's so cool.
I love that. That is brilliant. And I didn't know, I'd heard something about this before, but I didn't actually know that it existed. So if I ask you, Jill, right now, who's getting great ratings? Where's a great place to work?
Sure. Well, actually, for Canada, annually we publish a list of the best places to work. So if you go on to glassdoor.ca, we have a best places to work list there. There are 25 of the top rated companies to work for in Canada. And this is not Glassdoor saying this. The companies are voted for by the employees who work there. So based on real life employee experience of what it's like to work at these companies, these are the best companies to work for in Canada.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, but you mentioned 25 companies. Can you tell us a couple of the, say, 2 or top 3?
Off the top of my head, I'm so sorry. I can't remember right at this very moment.
I'm logging in, but you need
this
to
means we'll have to log in and figure it out,
and everything. So
we'll
figure that
fine.
out, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I will find them and then I will share them with the team.
How long have this company been around actually doing this? Because as Natasha said, it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, we've been around for a number of years and definitely growing in Canada. And the whole idea is that it's a community. So the next time that you're looking for a job, you can read that job spec, you can read the application, you can speak to the hiring manager, and they will give you one view of what that company might might be like to work for. What Glassdoor does is give you the real-life experience of what it's like for the people who are currently working there. Everyone has to give some pros, they have to give some cons on there, and they have to give advice to management, and they rate it out of 5. We know that salary transparency is something that people really struggle with. So you can also go onto Glassdoor to see what a data scientist, for example, at Google may well earn, so that then you can go into your interviews and into your negotiations with more confidence.
Awesome. I was able to get in here quickly and go through a few. So I'll just list, like, let's say the top 5. The top 5 in Canada right now are Dell Technologies, that's number 1, Keg Restaurants, number 2, Roche is 3, Sienna, number 4, and Google, number 5. So those are your top 5 companies. Desjardins, by the way, Quebec company, is number 8. These are so interesting.
And is now that list for 2022?
Yep,
2022.
Yep, that's for 2022. So we publish the list every year in January, and we publish it in Canada, the UK, a couple of other places in Europe, and in the US as well.
Well, I kind of liked it if it would have been just simply, I'm quitting. That would have been a lot of fun.
Informative, interactive, and always interesting. This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Okay, then there's this. With so many conspiracy theories abounding, it's not surprising to hear one researcher refer to them as being in their golden age. But beyond the sheer number of them, how much danger do they potentially cause, and is there any way to control them? We tried to find out. So Donovan SCHAEFER is on the line. He's an assistant professor of religious studies at the University of Pennsylvania. Mr. SCHAEFER, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So can I ask this idea of the golden age of conspiracy theories, why is this happening, do you think, now?
That's a good question. I don't know that there's an easy answer for that, but I sort of suspect that it's got something to do with, now more than ever before, we've just got access to each other, to media, to information. I think once upon a time, back in the early days of the internet, we all sort of hoped that the information that would float to the surface, the stuff that would be the most successful or the most visible, was going to be the information that was most accurate or the information that was most true. But I think partly what we've seen is that the most successful stories out there are often the ones that are most exciting, regardless of whether or not they're actually true. And I kind of suspect that that's partly telling the story of the situation we're in.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, you wrote in this piece, I found this fascinating, that there are actually key themes in conspiracy theories, right? There's kind of like an agenda here is to get the most eyeballs on something.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't help but think about the role that social media plays in all of this, and how social media can be a place where you feel very much like you belong or you feel like an outsider. And I sense that this sort of gravitation towards conspiracy theories has something to do with wanting to belong, with wanting to be a part of something. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's really nicely said. I think a big part of what makes conspiracy theories so successful is that it often uses as a sales pitch something along the lines of, this is the information that they don't want you to know, right? Like it's all about the us versus the them, and the people who are the gatekeepers, they're trying to prevent you from finding something out. And that's just a very exciting, it's a very powerful pitch that has a very long history. This is how snake oil pitches have always worked, is by presenting themselves as special knowledge for insiders.
Yeah, and then, of course, you have all the people who buy in, right? And then I love this line which says, first of all, it makes you feel or lets you feel like you're smarter than everyone because you know this, but other people don't.
You're special.
Yeah, absolutely.
How does that work, though? I mean, are algorithms then part of the issue here as well? Because we know that they will keep, once they know you've bought into something, they'll keep feeding you this.
I think that's a huge part of it, yeah. And the way that algorithms, basically, it's like you were saying, the algorithms are creating communities. The algorithms are building these groups of people who are united by the ideas, the stories, the information that they share collectively. And that's actually creating borders in terms of what people believe, not just, what group you think you belong to, but also what you believe. So you define yourself in part because, that group over there believes something different from what you believe. We see this in U.S. politics all the time. People making it a kind of litmus test that somebody believes a certain conspiracy theory in order to get a political campaign off the ground or something like that.
And then this idea that you can try so hard to convince someone that what they've read and that this information that they think that is special, that the conspiracy theory is false, and yet they cling to it, right? Like they need it to be true. Is that part of what makes conspiracy theories so dangerous?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think, anybody who's debated with somebody who's really deep in the clutches of a conspiracy theory knows that it's very hard to persuade them. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get them to see something in a different way. And part of what I think a lot of approaches to conspiracy miss is that conspiracy theories are really exciting. They take the entire world and they kind of turn it into a cartoon where everything has a place, everything fits together, all of the information is relevant, and it's like a symphony. Like everything is coordinated with everything else. But you talk to historians. Historians will always tell you that the world, even these big world historical events, they're often driven by accidents. They're often things that were unexpected or unforeseen, or somebody makes a mistake. That's the kind of world that conspiracy theorists just can't stand because it's a boring world. It's a world that's kind of silly. And so much of what makes conspiracy theory tick is the way that it makes the world such an interesting place.
Yeah, I love one part of this story that you wrote as well, which said where you write, in fact, the more obscure the source is, the more true believers want to trust it. Why is that?
Yeah, I find that to be one of the most mysterious features of conspiracy theory, but I think it's a really powerful aspect that comes back to what we were saying before about how so often the sales pitch of conspiracy theory is this is what people don't want you to know. This is what the government or scientists or some other person in power doesn't want you to know. And the problem is that makes you incredibly susceptible. Conspiracy theorists, they always think that they are intensely critical. They think that they're very careful. They think that they are analyzing the world on this next level. But actually, it's made them very vulnerable because they buy the most ludicrous stories that just happen to come along with the right sales pitch.
I'm wondering as we wrap up here as well with COVID, and we started to see so many of these theories over vaccines and COVID itself, that kind of seemed to me to catapult conspiracy theories into a whole new level.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think you really can't underestimate the power of specific figures like Donald Trump and people who have tried to copy the Trump playbook. Trump is somebody who really understands that conspiracy theories make him powerful. His whole political career has been built on conspiracy theories, going all the way back to the birther conspiracy with Barack Obama.
Right.
And so he loves conspiracy theories because he knows that they're exciting and they're part of his political brand.
Right. He's learned how to weaponize them. I was just trying to wrap my brain around that. Like, so why is it so dangerous? Why can't it just be harmless? Let people just believe this bunk is true. But the problem is it gets weaponized.
Yeah, that's really nicely put.
Listen, we're not getting rid of these things, I'm guessing, anytime soon. They're going to be around, I guess, for a while. And social media obviously will do its part to keep spreading them. So we may be in the golden age, Donovan, but I'm guessing the idea is we may be in this for a long, long time, right?
I'm afraid that might be the case. I think when you look at historical conspiracy theory research from, even 20 years ago, the researchers will often start by saying, I know that this is kind of silly. I know that this is not a big deal. I know that this is not very important. The extent to which conspiracy theories have moved into the mainstream in the last 10 years is astonishing, and I agree with you. I don't think it's going away soon.
Donovan SCHAEFER, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Donovan SCHAEFER, University of Pennsylvania. Not going anywhere anytime soon.
Informative, interactive, and always interesting. This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
The Supreme Court of Canada ruled recently that not wearing a condom during sex when you've been asked to could result in a sexual assault conviction. How significant is this ruling, and what does it mean going forward in terms of consent?
So let's try to get some information as to what it was and what it means from ISABEL Grant. She's a professor at the University of British Columbia's Allard School of Law and on the line right now. Thanks for your time this afternoon. Can I begin by asking, with respect to the decision itself, is it as simple as me summarizing this by saying that it means that if you are in fact not wearing a condom during sex when you've been asked to, that could mean that you in fact have assaulted someone sexually? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, after the decision last week.
So what does that mean with respect to, first of all, pending cases now? Will this change anything? Are we going to see some of these cases go back to court?
No, I think that the law was unclear prior to this case. Some judges were holding, as the Court of Appeal did in this case, that if you refuse to wear a condom where the complainant has asked for one, that was already sexual assault. What this case does is bring clarity to the law and make clear that if you refuse to use a condom when you've been told that consent is limited, but the complainant is only consenting to sex with a condom, then that is going to be sexual assault, whether the accused refuses or whether he removes the condom in the middle of the sexual activity.
Okay, and just to understand, in this specific case, it's because the condom was used the first time and consent was granted, but then a condom was not used the second time. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, on the facts of this case, the complainant made very clear that she would only have sex with the accused if he used a condom. And the first time they had sex, she said, "Have you got a condom?" And he reached over and got a condom from his bedside table. The evidence here is a bit unclear as to whether he tricked her into believing he was doing the same thing the second time, or whether he just proceeded without a condom. And that's why this case made it to the Supreme Court of Canada, because there's earlier case law from the Supreme Court of Canada that says condom use does not go to consent. And that's why it's 2022 and we're still having to litigate this issue now.
Do you think that's why the decision was not unanimous, because of those details?
I think the decision was not unanimous because of this prior decision of the Supreme Court of Canada. That was a case called Hutchinson, where a man deliberately sabotaged a condom by poking holes in it in order to impregnate his sexual partner. And in that case, the Supreme Court of Canada said it doesn't go directly to consent. It will only be relevant if the accused deceptively, fraudulently endangered the complainant and caused her a risk of bodily harm. In this case, which is a little different, this case is about refusing to wear a condom, not sabotaging a condom. In this case, the majority of the court said that case was different. This case is about refusal. Refusal goes to consent. The minority in this case said you can't overrule that case. The distinction between a sabotaged condom and no condom isn't a sensible distinction. And the minority said that it was bound by that previous decision where the man sabotaged the condom.
Okay, so premeditation is obviously a key in this decision, right? If you make that conscious decision to not wear the condom despite having been told you should in order for it to be considered consensual, you've basically broken the law.
Yeah, although I don't think it's really premeditation. The accused in that previous case I mentioned deliberately sabotaged those condoms in advance, and that did not go to consent. I think the line the court is drawing here is between refusing to have sex with a condom or removing a condom during sex, and on the other hand, sabotaging a condom so that the complainant thinks you're wearing a condom, but you've damaged it. And the court, the majority of the court is saying here that those first two circumstances, refusing or removing a condom, go directly to consent. And if the complainant has said, I will only have sex with you if you wear a condom, that is sexual assault.
Okay, so that was going to be my question. So what does this mean for consent going forward? But that sounded pretty clear, that final statement that you just made there. So if you have agreed to having sex, but on the basis of wearing a condom, and that is not upheld, let's say, that is potentially assault.
that yes, that will be sexual assault. If the complainant, what we're not clear on is how, what form of agreement or what form of insistence will be required on the part of the complainant. But in this case, it was very clear that she told the accused that she would only have sex with him if he wore a condom. After the first time they'd had sex, she asked to see the condom to prove that he had, in fact, been wearing it. This is someone who was really vigilant about condom use. What the majority has said here is that sex with a condom is different than sex without a condom, and consenting to sex with a condom does not mean you are consenting to sex without. So I think that's really important. This case is a little bit complicated because it's not about guilt or innocence. The trial judge threw this case out, said there's no basis for finding sexual assault in what we call a no evidence motion. And so what the court has done is say, no, there's evidence here, now go back and try the case.
Because a crime has been committed. I guess it was just new territory in terms of determining what the crime was. What are the repercussions?
In terms of, this accused will go back to trial now.
Okay.
The trial judge had originally relied on that earlier case that I mentioned in Hutchinson and said that that refusing to wear a condom does not go to consent. And the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court of Canada agreed that it has to go back for a new trial.
Okay.
It's crazy how I hate to kind of, look at it that way, but it seems so mechanical, doesn't it? You have to do this, you're not going to do that unless you do this, you can't have that. And I wonder at this point...
to me, this is a positive thing, though, and yet I've read that some people see that this is a troubling precedent. So
I know that it's troubling in the sense that this is supposed to be something two people are doing, hopefully, obviously, consensually, and then this now enters sort of the equation, and you have to now have this debate before actually going. I don't know. It's an awful lot to have to take in, and something that should be an act that both people are happy to do.
We've been hearing about stealthing, which is exactly that. You say you're going to wear a condom and you don't. And to me, consent, I agree with the findings of this case. Not that it's up to me to determine so, but Isabel, do you view this as a positive thing in terms of moving forward, having to do with consent?
I absolutely view it as a positive thing. I think it's important that I get to control how my body is touched sexually. Not somebody else making that decision for me. And if you talk to women, like the complainant in this case, they say that they perceive it as sexual assault. This complainant went straight to the hospital and then to the police, right? She clearly perceived what had been done to her as sex without her permission or without her consent. So I think it's really important that when something as important as use of a condom is at stake, that we have clear communication.
Okay. Again,
thank you for making it clear.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for taking the time with us today. It's very much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
The stories in the news that are worth your time. Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Pfizer's antiviral medication Paxlovid is designed to reduce the risk of hospitalization in patients with COVID-19. The good news is it's now been approved for use in Canada. Let's try to find out more about who should be considering taking it and why. Info on this. Dr. Brian Conway is medical director of the Vancouver Infectious Diseases Center. He's on the line right now. Dr. Conway, thanks for the time this afternoon. With respect to Paxlovid and Canadians, what's the situation right now?
Well, it should be widely available in all provinces and territories. The Government of Canada pre-purchased a number of doses. It's approved for sale or for distribution in Canada. It is free of charge to the patients. All the doses have been paid for by the Government of Canada, so it should certainly be more available than it seems to be.
Now, can I ask the question, which I'm sure a lot of other people, and I think we asked this when it first became available, and people were saying, well, great, so instead of taking the vaccine for whatever reason, people were hesitant or didn't want to get a needle, a jab, they thought, I could just take this instead. Does that apply?
Absolutely not. The vaccine is our first line of defense. Everyone by now should have gotten 3, if not 4 doses. That is what's going to help control the spread of COVID. Paxlovid is meant for those who slip through the cracks, who get COVID, whether they're vaccinated or not, and who require some intervention to help them stay out of hospital.
Okay, and how does it work? How does it treat the disease? Does it work kind of like a vaccine?
Absolutely. Well, it's a different thing. It's a drug that is directed against the virus. It's sort of like the antivirals we take for the flu, for herpes infections and the like. So it's directed against the virus. It needs to be taken within the first few days of infection to be maximally effective. It knocks down the viral counts very quickly, and it prevents disease progression, especially in those that might be at risk of requiring hospitalization with their COVID infection.
So let's frame that then. If you're one of those people, I understand we're talking people, I guess, over 70 or people who are immunocompromised to begin with. If you're someone who's had vaccines, say 2 or 3 doses, and you get COVID, are you an automatic candidate? Can you be for Paxlovid?
You can be a candidate. So these are individuals who have some of the risk factors that you just mentioned, who have been diagnosed with COVID by a regular test or a lab test, who've been infected in the previous 5, preferably in the previous 3 days, that's as long as they've had symptoms, and who do not require hospitalization at this time. The point of the medicine is to make the disease go away more quickly so that in these individuals we avoid their need to be hospitalized and potentially require ICU admission, die from the infection even. So that's where Paxlovid has its role.
Okay, what I'm trying to understand is, does it help prevent hospitalizations? I guess I'm trying to understand why hospitalizations aren't lower if we're using this drug.
Well, we probably aren't using it enough. The
Okay.
clinical trial that was done was in the very group that I just described, and it showed that it reduced the risk of hospitalization by 83% in individuals who otherwise would have been at risk of being hospitalized because they're unvaccinated, because they're older, because they have other immune diseases or taking immunosuppressive medicines, heart disease, lung disease. So it's a large group of people. So these are the people that constitute the vast majority of those that are hospitalized and eventually can succumb to COVID. So that's the role of Paxlovid, and another drug called molnupiravir that unfortunately isn't available in Canada, is available in many other countries worldwide. So we have 2 different drugs that are active in the sense that I've just described.
Okay, well, let me ask this then. So you've told us who should be getting these particular drugs, this particular drug. What if you're not in that group, yet you had your vaccines and you got COVID regardless? Can you get Paxlovid? Would that be of use to you, or the government saying you should not be doing that? In other words, if you're 45 years old, you've gone through the vaccine cycle, yet you get sick right now, can you take Paxlovid?
Well, you're not at a terribly high risk of hospitalization, and really that's the greatest benefit of Paxlovid. However, I think this is a situation that an individual can discuss with their doctor. We need to make sure that doctors, pharmacists, everyone is aware that this is available, aware who the key target population is, and maybe for others, they can at least have that conversation. And if the doctor thinks that Paxlovid would help that particular person, I suspect that it could be made available to them, but they aren't the key group.
Okay. So my question would just simply be then, if you're not that key group and your doctor doesn't think you should get it and you get COVID, your only treatment then is to basically stay home, don't affect anybody else, and do nothing else?
Well, stay home, obviously. We want to limit spread. You're an individual who would probably just get better from COVID in the vast majority of cases over several days. And we have no information, no data from clinical trials or otherwise that person's illness would be shortened in duration or made more milder by Paxlovid. Yeah.
Okay.
So I just want to ask a quick question about President Joe Biden, and we're hearing about this drug more because of what's happened to him. So are you seeing rebound cases more where someone gets COVID and then gets it again in quick succession?
So Paxlovid is one medicine to which the virus could develop resistance.
Okay.
And it is being reported that 2 to 3% of people that take Paxlovid have a rebound infection several days to a couple of weeks after having recovered. This seems to be the case for President Biden, and it points out one of the limitations of Paxlovid and probably why we shouldn't be using it in settings where it isn't exactly needed. You could get resistance.
Okay, last question before we run out of time. What is the regimen for Paxlovid if you're put on it?
You take it twice a day for 5 days, and it must be started within 5, preferably 3 days of initially developing symptoms. Otherwise, it is much less effective.
And then you would be good to go after that cycle is over?
In principle, yes, unless you have a fever or a cough that's progressing.
All right. Dr. Conway, thank you so much. Appreciate your time this afternoon.
Great pleasure.
Dr. Brian Conway over at the Vancouver Infectious Disease Center. There's your pretty direct,
good.
huh? Yeah.
I love his no-nonsense approach.
Absolutely.
It was so clear, so easy to comprehend.
And as he says, it is available generally across Canada now. You can get it here in Montreal. I got a couple of texts from people saying, yes, I've gotten it as well. So if you're thinking, is it right for you? As he said, talk to your doctor. It is available in Quebec. That wraps up this edition of The Week That Was on the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall, and we will see you next week.
Have an excellent week.
This has been the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall. Listen live on your radio weekday afternoons from 2 to 6 on CJAD 800 or through the iHeartRadio app.